Holy gamoly. My name's Katie Kosar, and I'm an alcoholic. I feel like I should be in Hollywood somewhere or something with all these lights. So my sobriety date is November 14th, 1982. Praise God. Okay. I sobered up at Northeast Johnson County, also known as 80th Street. And I am now a member of the Shawnee group. And I usually go to meetings there around noon and on whichever day fits with my retired schedule, you know. So I was kind of, you know, first of all, I want to say, ain't it grand? Nobody has said that. And that's what our theme is this year. Ain't it grand? I love it. When I asked Tony, you know, what are we supposed to do? First of all, I don't like being called old, you know, it's Oldtimers. But, you know, then I reflected on how much time I do have in the program, and, it's 39 years so far, and it just doesn't feel like it, you know. So Tony told us we were supposed to talk about our observations about what AA was like, you know, when we sobered up. And I thought, well, you know, it really hasn't changed at all. I've changed, and maybe my group was a little different, the place was a little different, but AA really hasn't changed. The program is still the same. So I'm going to talk about the place and some of the people where I sobered up at Northeast Johnson County. One of the things was, you know, I went to Al-Anon there before I went to AA there, and so I knew the place. So the steps didn't bother me. There are a lot of steps you have to go up to get into that particular place. And when you get up there, there's a kind of an ante-room where we used to have a guy that sat up there and answered the phone, George. He was there all the time. During the day, and he would answer the phone, so you could call up there and see who was there and see if you really wanted to mix, you know, with the people that were there. But so, you know, the place was, you go up these steps, and then they had the room where George was and the phone was, and then they would have the main meeting room, but then they had all these little rooms around there, which is where they took me for my first step meeting, into one of those rooms. And the lady that took me to my first meeting, I worked with her, and she told me her story one day over lunch, and that prompted me to go to Al-Anon. So she met me at my first meeting, so I wasn't alone up there, and she took me into one of those rooms. And it was such a blessing, because if she hadn't done that, and if the people that were there weren't there, I don't think I would have stuck around to figure out whether I was an alcoholic or not, or in the right place or not. So there was this one guy in the room that I'm a retired attorney, and he was an attorney, and they told me 90 meetings in 90 days, and I thought, I am way too busy to do 90 meetings in 90 days. But when he spoke, he told everybody that he had done that, and I thought, well, if he can do it, I can probably do it too. So I stuck around for the 90 days. I found out I was an alcoholic long before the 90 days were up. I'm really, really glad. I thought if I was an alcoholic, it would be, you know, a big tragic deal, a really hard thing to address, and it's turned out to be the very best thing and the most gentle thing. So the other thing that really got me about the different rooms up there is when I used to see my sponsor up there, and I was always glad when my sponsor was at the same meeting that I was at. Her name was Linda. She's still my sponsor today. I've had one sponsor this whole time. And sometimes people would break off from the main group and go into these rooms. Like maybe Linda and a group of people would go into one of these rooms instead of staying in the main meeting. And I always wanted to go with her, but I didn't think if they would want me or not, you know. So sometimes I would just sit there at the main meeting, and the other thing was it was really smoky up there. Everybody smoked. Everybody smoked. I'm a non-smoker, and we had these smoke eaters up there, and I remember them crackling during the meeting and thinking, is this really working? Is this doing anything? You know, but anyway, continuing along the smoking thing, my first service job was cleaning the ashtrays. I still remember the ashtrays were these metal ashtrays, and I think they were kind of chipped and different colors, and you could never get them clean anyway because the ashes were like embedded in the metal and stuff, and it was just interesting. But you know, it gave me something to do. I was so self-conscious when I got up there. I'd just grab ashtrays and start cleaning them, you know, and so it worked. The other thing that was really important to me that's really more substantive was they had a big book study there. And in one of the little rooms, we would go back, and I was invited somehow. I felt comfortable going back there. And Shep led this big book meeting. And of course, I read the book, I understood the words, but I didn't know the history behind Alcoholics Anonymous or really behind the program of the steps. I knew what the words meant, but I really didn't know how to apply them to my life. And so he was so good at telling us these things. But I was like, you know, a little third grader in there with my highlighter and my pencil and everything. And there was another guy in that meeting named Bob, and Bob is sitting in this room today. I see him back there. And Bob would sit next to me, and he was also like a third grader in a classroom. And he would lean over at my book, and he would highlight things in my book to make me laugh while we were doing this. And I still have that book, and I still know what parts were highlighted by Bob. And so, let's see, what else was there? After Tony, one of the other things that I noticed, I always wanted to appear smarter than I really was. So I would sit across from the signs that they had with the steps and the traditions. And when people would talk about a step, then I would know what the step said because I hadn't memorized it yet. And I think spiritual in 11th step was misspelled. I think they left out the U or something like that. I could be wrong about this because after all, I'm old and I don't remember everything, but I'm one of these people that can see the flaw in just about anything. And so when something like that sticks out, it's annoying to me, and if I'd had more confidence, I probably would have asked that it be corrected, but somehow it got corrected over the years. The other thing we used to do was birthday celebrations at Northeast Johnson County were a big deal. Let me take a drink here. And what we would do is we would have a cake that was, you know, really decorated nice and specific to the birthday. People would bring presents like a real birthday, and you would ask somebody to speak for you. You didn't tell your own story, you had somebody else tell their story. So on my first birthday, I remember being so nervous. I mean, I'm nervous now, but I was so nervous then. And we had a podium there that was huge. It was so tall that a person of my height would have to step on a stool to get up to the microphone. So you take a person with shaky legs and put a stool behind a podium, and it was a dangerous situation. But now, I don't know if that is the same podium that they have at the new place or not, but it just doesn't seem, I've been to the new place that they have now, and it does not seem as overwhelming as it did on that first birthday. Trying to think, let's see if I have anything else. How much time do I have? Okay. Oh, and then, and one of the speakers talked about this too, about the meeting after the meeting. Again, I was pretty shy and I didn't know if I'd be invited or not, but everybody would go to the Village Inn after the meeting, and I went to 3 meetings a day. So I would go to the noon meeting, the 6 p.m. meeting, and the 8 o'clock meeting, and after the 8 o'clock meeting, people would go to the Village Inn. And I learned how to be around people and get relaxed and enjoy someone's company without always thinking, oh, what are they going to think of me? Should I order this? Should I sit over here next to this person? It's all about me. I learned how to be in relationship with a group of people and not think about me all the time. Now, that took quite a while, but it has helped me a lot. So I think I'm going to sit down. I don't know how long I've talked, but that's not the main stuff I remember. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Katie. And next up, we have Jim with 40 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Pettyjohn. I'm an alcoholic, and I guess I'm supposed to give my sobriety date, which is March 1st in 1981. So, not to be rushing anything, but I will have 41 years in a little bit. So, assuming this doesn't make me drink. So. Well, Katie started off absolutely right. AA hasn't changed. The delivery of AA has changed quite a bit. When I first came in, the first meeting I had was in the Kansas City number 1 group on, I think that's what they called it, it's on 63rd Street. And it was a big hall, and they sat me down in the office and had a small meeting, and I didn't realize it at the time. It took me working this program for several years to realize that my resistance to going into that large meeting was too many people, and I was afraid. And it didn't dawn on me until after a while that I was afraid of just about everything. And that led to a lot of my character defects because that's the way I reacted to the world. Anyway, what I've witnessed coming in here, and I think it's, I'm not trying to say what it's like today or it's better today or worse today. It just simply is. I got used to giving my last name because we figured that how else are you going to find out who we are in the phone book if we don't give our last name? And there's no phone books now. And there's all kinds of ways for people to get in contact with us. And so I think Katie and I are both kind of in that same habit of giving our last name. But the other thing I noticed too about the difference between now and then is that there's a lot more meetings that we can go to. And that has changed the way AA is delivered because people can go to different meetings and meet with different people. And in a way, it's not too great because we can hide that way. When my first home group was Northeast Johnson County, same as Katie. That's where I met Katie, and that's where I met her husband before they were married, and that's where I met my wife. And so Katie and I have something very similar is that, we both got married to different people on AA campus, and it seemed to work because it's been a great ride ever since then. But anyway, I think that the idea of having a home group where people get to know you is important, and it was important then, and it's still important today, but it's so much easier to skip around and go to, well, let's go on Tuesday mornings, let's go over to this group, and Wednesday night, let's go someplace else. And where I grew up in western Kansas, that's what they did, is every night they went to a different place because they only had one meeting a day, a week in my hometown, and the idea was everybody got in cars and they drove 30 miles to the next town, and the day after that they would go someplace else. And that's kind of the way it was in the smaller towns. But getting back to the way the AA is delivered, I think the influx of treatment centers and the influx of people being court-ordered to come to AA has changed the mix of how newcomers are related to other people that have sobriety, which, when you've been to a treatment center, they kind of run you through the 12 steps. And there was a lot of criticism that I heard when I first came in of treatment centers selling the program. And I don't think that treatment centers really, how can you sell a program that's really given? And I think it's just simply an introduction, but that's my opinion. And today I think there's a lot more acceptance in AA of let's go to treatment, because when you think about it, what AA today cannot do very well, we can't detox people very well. I think that's a hospital and a treatment center operation. And the numbers of the growth in AA since the early 80s has been so astronomical all over the world that I don't think the old style of being a sponsor really works that well, because you'd be tied up all the time doing nothing but sponsoring people. And so I think that has changed a lot. The other thing too, Katie mentioned about the smoking. I got kind of tired of going to throwing my clothes in the hamper and washing them after one day, because it smelled like smoke all the time. And then we found a no smoking room and at another club. So my wife and I started going there. And then pretty soon the whole thing was non-smoking. There was another group that I went to sometimes at noon that was close to my office that they had a no-smoking section. And what they had is they had a sign that said smoking this way, non-smoking this way. They set it on the table in the middle of the table. And if somebody came in late and he was smoking, he would take the sign and move it down so that let's just make the non-smoking section smaller. And, it was like, that worked for those guys, because they were pretty much rebels anyway. So, but I do know that, a lot of talk is that, to get rid of all the mood and mind-altering drugs in our bodies, and I think that's really true until you talk to a group of people in AA about let's go non-smoking, and you see a lot of people have a mood-altering emotion, and so it's like, maybe there's something to that, but I don't think chemically and clinically that's proven, but it certainly alters moods when you tell somebody you can't smoke. But Yeah, I think I'm just about running down to the bottom of my pit too. So, I think we better get Johnny up here.
Thank you. And next up, we have Johnny S. with 58 years of sobriety.
I'm an alcoholic, and my friends call me Johnny. I was thinking, and I was born in Dodge City, Kansas in 1933, and it was terrible out there. Dust storms, jackrabbits, grasshoppers. It was a bad deal. And the reason I'm an alcoholic is I grew up underfed and oversexed. And so I know why. But anyway, I never could drink. I just couldn't do it. I never was a social drinker. But I got discharged from the United States Marine Corps in 1954. And I was drinking bad then. And it came up, that was in May of 54. It was coming up close to Christmas time. And my wife told me, she says, you know, I don't want you drinking over the holidays because you ruin everything. So why don't you see about that AAA business? And so I did. And I went down to a building down at 63rd True Street. And there was a little office in there. And I walked in there, and it was during the day. And this elderly gentleman says, "May I help you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "My wife sent me down here for you guys to straighten me up." Well, he says, "Let's talk about it a little bit." And he says, I don't know what all he said, but this was the context of the meeting. He says, "The way this works here is," he says, "we've got some zones. They're called A, B, C, and D. And each one of those zones has 8 units in it. And I'm going to assign you to C7. And I says, "Okay." He says, "Now, we don't have meetings here, but it's in people's homes. But every Monday, you'll get a postcard in the mail to tell you where the meeting is." I says, "Okay." And it could be any place. It could be Raytown, Johnson County, any place in Kansas City. That was where the meeting was. And I would go there. And these guys would look at me, young face-looking kid. And this one guy came to me, he says, "How in the world can you be an alcoholic at 21 years old?" And I looked him straight in the eyes and I told him, "You old codger, I spilt more than you drank." So now I'm on the defensive. But anyway, I went to the meetings. Oh, then they had a Friday night meeting, was open meeting over at the hall. And I came in there, and they had a little stage up there, and there's a fellow sitting in a chair up on the stage. I said, "What's he doing?" And he said, "Well, he's celebrating his first birthday." I said, "What?" I said, No. I said, "You guys just put him up there and impress me. There ain't nobody stayed sober a year." But that's the way I felt about it. Where I went to the meetings, and I stayed 87 days, 2 meetings a week. And I left a Friday night meeting and took off for running, a first-class slip, and it was bad. It lasted 9 years. Lasted 9 years. And I was 30 years old then. And I'd been on a 3-day drunk. And I'll never forget this. I was in my old beat-up Chevrolet car. And probably all of you have done this before, and there was big snowflakes coming down. And the headlights are going right into those snowflakes. And I knew this, and I'm driving along just so slow like this. And I do believe, I said, please God, will you help me? And that's the last drink of alcohol I've had. So then I started going to meetings at the Overland Park Group, 74th and Floyd Street, in a little house. And I was in there, and I see something now. I had to sit on my hands on the chair because I was shaking too bad. And the meeting was over, and I started from the front door because it was close by it right there. There was only 10 people there. And this fella jumped in front of the door, and he said, hi, my name's Don. He said, welcome, come back. I said, do what? He says, come back. I said, well, nobody's ever asked me don't come back. They say, please don't come back. So that was the start of it. And I went to the meetings. And they never did ever talk about, we only had 2 meetings a week. Tuesday night, closed meeting, and Thursday night was open meeting. And this was the only meeting in all of Johnson County at the time, except they had one meeting in Olathe, Kansas. But they never ever did talk about 90 meetings in 90 days. That'd be a tough pull, 2 weeks. But anyway, I just kept coming back. And a fella introduced himself to me, and he said, my name's Don. He's a tough-looking little character with a flat-top crew cut. And he looked like that Sergeant Bilko on Gomer Pyle. He said, I'm your sponsor. I said, oh, yeah. He said, yeah. And I was a plumber. And, boy, Don took a case to me. He was an electrician. And I said, you know, Don, you might not realize this, but I used to be an electrician until I learned to read and write, and I got to be a plumber. And we were like this all the time, but we were good for each other. And he wouldn't ease up on me. No, he kept close tabs on me, you know what I mean? So I just kept going, one day at a time. It's just amazing as I look back. It really is. But then we came there, and then they started other groups, this, that, and the other, and I've continued to be very active in Alcoholics Anonymous through the years. Right now, my home group is the Liberty Group in Liberty, Missouri. And I say this because you say this about your group. This is the best group there ever was. Yeah. But like I say, I'm very grateful. I'm so grateful to be here. Very grateful. My hearing is very impaired. I read lips a little. But I get along. You know, but I miss an awful lot. But the VA's working on it. And I'm hoping it'll get better. You see what I mean? I can't sponsor people right now because I just can't get with them, you know. We didn't have all this internet stuff back then. I sponsored a lot of people back then. We'd buy the telephones. And it just kept going on. Different places, different birthdays. A lot of very happy endings. I used to love the first birthdays. I'd always sit on the front row because I couldn't hear, but I could read the lips and look. And I always liked to look at the speaker's eyes. And I call it dancing eyes. And I would notice that the people who were talking, they talked about spirituality and things like that. They had a different look to me, you know. But what I'm getting at is this. I love to see a fellow celebrating, because there's no women then. He says, I would love to see a fellow celebrate his first birthday, because usually right there would be the wife and 2 little kids. on the front row. You know, he did nice. But I'm not much of a speaker, but they wanted me to share the early days the best I could. The best I could. Basically, it's the language of the heart. You know, when I first came in, I won't forget that. There was about a second or third meeting. I was standing there, and this little tough guy comes over to me. He says, "You know, kid," he said, "you don't look too swift to me." He said, "I don't think you're going to be smart enough to stay sober." That was Don. And I says, "Oh, yeah, I'll show you." But, you know, and here's another big change. In all of the groups, women were very scarce. Hardly any women at all. We had one woman in our group named Myra. She's since passed. But they just weren't there. Now, I go to meetings over where I'm at, and half the time it's half the group's women, you know. And I like that, you know. Hey, man, I'm 88 years old. Now leave me alone. Okay, it's just been nice to be up here. You know, maybe I can share something. Sometimes people ask me this. They say, "How come you still go to so many meetings?" I said, "I want to tell you why." I said, "I'm here for me, and I'm here for you." Because I've had people tell me before, they said, "Johnny, do you remember something I said?" And I said, "I don't remember." He said, "Yeah, but you said something, and it clicked with them." You see what I mean? From out of here, and out of there. But I can say I'm very grateful to be here, and I pass.
Thank you, guys. That was great. We appreciate that. And now we're going to have John R. come up and read the promises for us and lead us in the Lord's Prayer.